if maybe he has, if that 12-year-old son were to ask you, like, Dad, let's get philosophical for a second. What's the meaning of life? Like, I see the script we follow. I see the approach you take to life. I'm your child. You're trying to guide me, and I understand you can't teach me because exactly as we're saying, it's up to each of us to decide that. But I'm trying to get some frame of reference to understand what's the point of this whole thing, why I'm here, why are you asking me to go in the ocean, trying to make sense of all of it. Is there a wrapper you could put on it to say, son, here's what I think. Here's what I think we're trying to do here. And maybe we touched on it already in the beginning of the conversation, but let me leave it open as that. If you're someone to ask you the meaning of life, how would you answer?
I think we can get bigger. I think our personality is a container for coping with the present. And if you believe that it's the limits of your reality, you're screwed and limited to it. So who you think you are and what you think is important is not who you think you are and is not what's important. It's just the boundary of what you feel secure in, which is important for sustaining your life and not getting yourself killed. But there is a deeper level of epiphany, exposure, encounter. There's higher standards of understanding and participation, which you can't really understand from any point of view where you're standing. Even as you level up, you're still at another level. And I just find, if I'm going to go out singing, it has to be because I appreciate there's something higher than what I have. In my son's case, he's got a mother who turned into an evangelical Christian, which I should have known because her legacy is that. And people don't fall, that far from the tree for sometimes bad, but usually good reasons. So to the extent that my son has existential questions, he finds answers in the Bible, which I am basically averse to because I just think it's another container. And some people use it as an open container to be moral and in balance, and that's okay. But most people use it as a protective container to
Limiting.
Behave correctly and absolve themselves. And I think the opposite. I think you should feel guilty for all the things that you're not doing. Not punish yourself, but motivate yourself. So being motivated. So again, being motivated, being curious. I heard an interesting quote the other day that being creative means you have a bad memory because creativity means adding what you recall with what you think might be possible. And if you're too factual about everything, it's all sewn up. The most creative scientists tend to be a little harebrained and a little ditzy. And some of the least creative scientists who I've known have been the most intellectually powerful and encyclopedic in their knowledge. So that's interesting. You're trying to learn, you're trying to figure things out, but you're also trying to undo and go beyond. So you say, why do you do that? I think it's a human tendency if it's uncovered. If you're fearless and if you're curious, you'll want to see what's on the other side of death. But if you're insecure and content, you'll just recede into comfort. So I don't think the point of life is to be comfortable or happy. And this is interesting because if you work with an athlete, they will agree that they don't evolve by being happy with their performance and comfortable in their actions. They evolve by pushing their boundaries. So in athletics, which is almost just a metaphor here, why do you do it? Because you learn something and you feel, I don't know, closer to the divine. It's a sort of intangible feeling, intangible texture. It's not who you are. So this is the point. There are layers to your personality, and you have to accept them. They're appropriate for the roles they play, being protective, knowing things, um, being able to predict the consequences of what you do. But there's also an exfolding, an obligation to be greater and to have a positive influence that is ultimately what's going to make you go out singing. And how do you, how do you get in touch with that? It's like an ongoing work. If you ever feel it's finished, you're finished.
Hmm.
You know, so you have to live that contradiction. I don't know how
Yeah,
else to do it. It has to
that's
be
the
okay.
phrase. Live the contradiction. I mean, and you said the idea before of like it's a container and you shouldn't stay in that container. And I think that's just one phrase you use that represents that. And I think that represents that contradiction because in some ways it's like if you never want to settle to be in a container, it's almost like you never want to set whatever you learn, whatever you think you know about yourself or the world or what you're supposed to be doing. As I'm hearing you talk, the mindset, the approach is don't settle for that. There's more, there's always more beyond that. And that creates this infinity concept of if there's always more beyond it, there's never a container you want to sit in, you are never settled. There is never an end state. It is always, the next thing and the next thing. But at the same time, there is some aspect of this sense of like there's a purpose to it and there's a reason and there's something you're trying to get to, trying to go out singing, literally and metaphorically. And that contradiction of like we're humans and we're here and we take actions and we have to have some things that are definitive that we can understand and put a stake in, but at the same time we don't want that, or at least you don't want that. You want to constantly be growing and evolving and breaking out of that container. In many ways, if somebody just heard me say those words, they'd be like, I don't even know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, I don't even know what we're
Right.
saying here. But as you're explaining it in this conversation, it's again, it's the embodiment of that. I'm seeing it in real life of what that means and what that looks like. If I'm being told, like, I don't know that I've met somebody before who fully embodies that, who in such a thoughtful, logical, almost scientific way is tapping into this intangible, intuitive, really something words can't do justice to of how you're trying to approach life.
Absolutely. Right.
It's fascinating. It's genuinely, I say that not for hyperbole, it's fascinating.